Hello, my name's Christopher Brookmyre and you're watching Connected Digital World. I think if I was being really honest, I'd say I would describe it as the most self-indulgent literary project of my career because I thought I wanted to write a story that encapsulated all of the things that I'd loved about video games all my life, and it was about changing relationship that we have with video games, because as games have evolved, so has their place in popular culture. So at the same time, I didn't want it to be something that was so meta that you didn't feel emotionally engaged with it. So I just wanted to write a big sprawling adventure story that was also a kind of love letter to all the video games that I'd ever played. The thing is that the two are inextricable. They can't be in any way divided because the entire genesis of the project came from the same approach from Nick Witcher, sitting over there, when he got in touch to say he'd read some of my books and understood that I was obviously well versed in certain areas of gaming culture, and would I be interested in working with him to develop a game. And when I came up with the idea, I realised the best way to develop the idea as a story was the way that I was most experienced with, which was writing a novel. But it was conceived to be a game first, and I realised actually I can turn this into a novel. And given that it was easier to write a novel than to finance and then produce a video game, the game came out first. But it's not a question of the game having come out and then there being an attempt to adapt it. It was always two sort of sides of the same project. Quake 2 plays a big part in it. I mean, I was hugely into Quake 2. Pretty much the single player side of it, but it was the game that I really kind of fell in love with online gaming through Quake 2, and to me it was the pioneering days of online gaming, because you were still largely using 36k modems or 28k modems, and there was some fortunate people who were on the ISDN line, but there was a sort of culture growing up around it that I wanted to remember. So that played a big part in it. So I wanted to write a story as if, well, what would happen if you were dropped into a game like Quake 2 and you saw it all for real, but you weren't the hero. You're like, find yourself as just one of the grunts that's supposed to be there to get gunned down in the first level. So that played a big part in it. But when I sort of developed the idea of an interlinked universe of games, then I wanted to go back and look at some of the other games that had made a big impact and imprint on my imagination, and so I was going back all the way to things like Jet Set Willy back in the 1980s, because I had a ZX Spectrum as many of my friends and I did, and the amount of imagination that we projected into those games, we started to imagine storylines that were lying behind it all. So I think that whole Spectrum era, I wanted, from the offset, I wanted to make sure that was included in the book. There's a lot of my crime novels I've maybe had some inspiration from other books I've read or movies I've watched, but this was really all came from the games. There's a sort of obvious, predictable crossover. People are always going to draw a comparison with The Matrix when there's a concept that's to do with an entirely virtually created universe, but it was, I suppose, reading things like Snow Crash before that introduced me to the idea of a vast virtually generated world, and also reading a lot of philosophy around it, things like Nick Bostrom and his let me get the phrase right because I always struggle with this one, he wrote this paper on the idea of a sort of simulated reality, and how it was how it's almost statistically more likely than that we're in real reality. So that kind of notion, once you start thinking about it, is quite inspiring from a writing point of view. Far more than I would ever have envisaged, because I came out with the overall outline, the concept, then I went away and wrote the book, and then after that I talked to the developers about what was going to be possible. We said realistically we're going to look at maybe about 6 worlds, so it was up to me to try and decide which 6 worlds would be best to focus on. So I then wrote an outline for that, and then when they started sketching out a plan of the game. I wrote the script, so I've been far more involved with this than any other tertiary projects. You know, I've had TV programme made, I've had radio plays made, and then stage plays made. I've never been so involved in a project. I've got to say that I've not found it. I've found it very rewarding. I've not found it particularly difficult at any time. The hardest challenge sometimes is fitting it in around trying to write crime novels at the same time. But I found that it taps into so many of my enthusiasms that it's never really felt like hard work. Men over 30 who are almost weeping with nostalgia at the fact that the games that they grew up playing are given this some sort of fictional validation, but also responses from women gamers when we tell them that the protagonist is female, which is very rare for an FPS. And I think we're all fed up with the sort of like gun-toting, macho, militaristic American hero, so a sort of sweary Glaswegian woman seems like a breath of fresh air. A breath of foul air, admittedly. I want people to say that they got a sense of immersion. You know, I want people to be drawn into the story. I don't want it to seem so meta, so about games that people aren't emotionally engaged with it. I think I like the idea of an adventure where you're drawn into a universe and it's got a story within a story. So I want people to really get that sense that they're identifying with this character who's lost in a world of video games. And I want them to, well, for one thing, I want them to be very emotionally engaged with it so that it hurts a wee bit when some of the surprises turn up in the game, which I can't reveal. It's the same concept, this concept of a interlinked gameverse, as it's called, where you can travel between different game worlds. But where it diverges is that in the book the hero was a guy called Ross Baker, and we thought when we were developing it that rather than have the game tell the same story and you play as the same person, it would be more fun for players to enter that world and know he's in there somewhere, so you do actually try and track him down within this world, but you've got that sense that you're experiencing it for yourself and from another character's point of view. Well, I'd be interested in doing a sequel to both, because the beauty of the concept of Bedlam was that it's a concept that allows anything in the future. You know, a world entirely created around games, so you can have any genre, any period. So there's boundless possibilities, and I've got a track record for writing things that are quite satirical. So I can have basically any scenario that I want to take the piss out of, I can create with this the whole Bedlam gameverse. I do generally look forward to FPSs, and I prefer a sci-fi scenario to. I'm not one for modern horror, modern warfare type scenarios. I like it to be spaceships and it's total escapism. I don't want realism in my video games. You know, if I want realism, I can open the front door.